editor, the one who gets it done, the one who puts everything together, Carmela Monk Crawford. And we are so excited about today's episode. I'm sure you have seen it all over social media, and I know you're going to enjoy this conversation. But this morning, we are welcomed by an amazing young lady, hopefully a new friend of mine. Her name is Amelia Flynn, and she is a marriage and family therapist in the New York City area. Amelia is also pursuing her PhD in marriage and family therapy at Antioch University New England, where her primary research focus is the father-daughter relationship in Black families. Her areas of clinical focus include premarital counseling, multiracial relationships and families, and African American family dynamics. Additionally, Amelia is actively engaged in scholar activism, where she focuses on elevating Black clinicians, exploring Black father-daughter outcomes, and examining racial socialization processes. Amelia is committed to amplifying underrepresented voices, advocating for systemic equity, and pushing the Black clinician collective forward. I know that she's going to add so much value and expertise to this conversation, and I cannot wait to get into it. So, as I said, we are getting into the one and only topic that was trending and headlining last week, and that is Jada, Will, and August and the Great Entanglement. I'm sure you have heard of it, where Jada seemed to have engaged in some sort of a relationship, as kind of exposed by August in an interview that he did with Angela Yee a couple weeks ago. And then the internet kind of engulfed into flames and really kind of required a response from both Jada and Will, because August claimed that Will gave him permission to be in relationship with his wife Jada, particularly because, and I quote, there was no romanticism within their relationship at that time. And so he kind of chronicles where he was and what he was dealing with in his own personal life when he got with Jada. But then he also talks about how he needed to kind of release her. And so about last year, he released a song kind of dedicated to her and their relationship, where he kind of shows this kind of made up text thread with the name Corin at the top of the thread. And Corin is supposedly Jada's middle name. And so he kind of talks through needing to leave that relationship and, her really not wanting to do that. But, she got over it. And subsequently, Jada brought herself to the red table so that she could clear some things up in the press, but also provide, as she likes to say, healing to unnamed individuals, whether that's her, whether it's Will, whether it's August. And so today we are super excited to really get into it because, quite frankly, what I saw when I watched both of these interviews and have really just been seeing what's going on social media, quite frankly, it appears as though Jada is quite toxic and emotionally unstable. And it also appears that August is emotionally broken, and Will is also still hurting from the, I guess, the betrayal of trust and loyalty that, can be interpreted in a variety of ways that we'll do this morning. But one particular thing that I really want us to discuss is, if Will had, for, example, he had met a friend of Willow's, and she came and she was heavily on drugs and substance abuse. She was grieving the loss of a sibling, and she was in need of healing. And Will eventually ended up in an emotional and sexual relationship with this young lady. the internet would be very clear that Will Smith was a predator, that he was using his position and his power to take advantage of a vulnerable young lady. And we would have absolutely no space for him to be broken. And so for his brokenness to have permitted such to happen. And what I find interesting is that in this situation, we are not really having a conversation about what it means for Jada to potentially be a predator, for Jada to potentially be someone who took advantage of her position, power, and influence, for Jada to be a woman who really inflicted emotional and sexual harm against this young man who is younger than me, 27, and was younger than that when he was in this entanglement with her. So I am really excited. I wanted to bring a mental health clinician to the podcast this morning because I really feel like there is just a lot here that we really need to unpack and understand that is not in my expertise or wheelhouse to help you tease out. And so I really want us to kind of have a robust conversation around marriage, around family, and just around mental health, but then also around what does it mean for us to really talk about how women also perpetrate violence, sexual and emotional, against men. So let's get into it, guys. Carmela, what is on your mind? What are your thoughts? Amelia, let's talk this thing through, guys.
You know what, Claudia? First of all, you did a lot of homework on that whole intro.
I did. I really did.
Amelia, you done watched the clips. I'm sitting here like, what in the world are we talking about today? This has got me crazy. I've been thinking about it ever since we said that we were doing this on the show. Why are we talking about Will Smith and Jada Pinkett Smith? Why? I'm like, that's my first reaction. You know, why are we talking about that? Because, you know, for me, our culture is so driven by what happens to other people who are in the limelight. And I'm like, why do I care? Tell me before I even ask my question, why do I even care about this?
Well, you know, I think that while this is not a gossip podcast, so we are not gathering together to revel in their kind of social destruction. The point of the podcast is to find the hope in the headline. And so the headline currently is Jada, Will, and August. And in not engaging with this conversation from the standpoint of trivial, I think that there are a lot of very real, important, and necessary lessons and conversations that can and should be had around this topic. One of the main ones being what I just said in terms of we rarely ever talk about how women emotionally and sexually exploit and take advantage of men. That's just not on the table. And to see something like this happen on such a major platform and to not take advantage of talking through what that looks like, why that happens, and how we can both protect our sons, but also heal our mothers and our aunts so that they stop doing this kind of violence, I think is not to remain relevant and deal with the things that matter. I also think that, you know, it's important for us to, yes, talk about marriage, but talk about it in a way that is relevant, the way that other people are currently engaging with it. And right now, people are wondering, man, are Will and Jada's example of life partnership, is this something to strive for? I know I'm gonna be completely honest, you know, it was attractive to me at first before seeing this situation. It absolutely
attractive.
The idea of a life partnership. Okay. So the idea that we are coming together, we're bringing two entities, empires, kingdoms together, and we're saying, you know what, no matter what happens, we're in it together. Nothing can break us up. I'm committed to you. I'm acknowledging and recognizing that you're broken, that you have a lot going on. I'm broken. I have a lot going on, but I'm committed to you as a person and I'm committed to our relationship. And saying like, hey man, let's do this life partnership thing. But I think it also was appealing because it removed these kind of stereotypical roles, right? So the idea that I, as a wife, I am expected to engage in the household and in the marriage in a certain way that might not even be within accordance to either my gifting or things that I like to do. And so it's like, well, hey, you know what? I'm actually not good at this. You are. So if we're in a life partnership and you clean better, clean. Like if we're in a, you know what I mean? It doesn't have the same kind of social pressures of I'm the wife, I'm supposed to be at the house cooking, cleaning, doing XYZ. It seemed to create space for a different kind of engagement. But I think that what is, you know, necessary to also acknowledge is that, you know, we're social media and the internet is a curated space.
Yeah.
So you can always present what you want people to see. And so you can present that this is what a life partnership is. And I can sit back and say, oh, I like that. That's what I want. But I'm not in that life partnership. And so I don't know what all comes with Jada's life partnership.
Yeah.
And clearly, I don't know the terms of the agreement. Yeah. And so now I'm actively watching on social media that part of the terms of agreement included when she's not feeling happy or she's not feeling loved, that she now has the right and ability to be in relationship with somebody else. Yeah. And I don't want that in the life partnership.
No, or in any relationship. And soon to be Dr. Amelia Flynn, I guess my question is, and Claudia, I respect all that. I hear you. That was when I said, that was my initial reaction. It's like, why are we talking about this? But the more when I looked at these videos, particularly the video with August in the interview, I was struck by the ability of this young man to articulate some of the most complex issues. Yep. And to do it with such self-awareness and knowledge of the work that had to be done, needs to be done, and is still being done. So my question to you, Amelia Flynn, can I call you Amelia? My question to you is, you know, when I look at this and what Claudia is saying is that it doesn't matter what people look on the outside, there's some drama and complexity on the inside, the likes of which variations we would never know, except we sat in your seat. Tell us about the complexity here and the drama here. Is this unusual?
Well, it depends on how you define usual, right? Usual.
Yeah, maybe that's wrong. Go ahead.
You know, the reality is that relationships by themselves are difficult. And by difficult, I just mean that they require work, right? And so you're bringing a flawed person and another flawed person together and saying, let's figure out these flaws. And in a healthy version of that, it would be, I do my own work to figure out my flaws and I'm aware of them. You do your own work to figure out your flaws and are aware of them. And then we communicate about those flaws. We don't seek to fix those flaws through each other, but through communication and understanding and being aware of what those are, we have meaningful conversation about that for more understanding and compassion and grace to be extended to each other in that process. What seems to have happened here is an individual that is flawed, and it seems like she's aware of her flaws, and another individual that's flawed and aware, because awareness doesn't necessarily translate into application, right? Okay. Like you can know what's going on for you and not still know how to correct that mechanism. You can be aware, but that doesn't always translate into, I'm going to make different decisions. I'm going to choose to regulate myself. I'm going to choose to do things that seem counter to what I'm bent towards, which might be dysfunction or abuse, right? And so it seems that these two individuals came and said, let's in this moment, and one probably more intentionally than the other, to let in this moment fix and try to work out the stuff that's going on the inside us through this thing called a relationship. And what ended up happening, which never works that well that way, is that someone was more dissatisfied with that than the other. And it leaves a discord in the relationship. And that seems to be what happened for August. There was an idea that through this, there was going to be this immense bonding. And, he describes that he felt love with her that he's never known before. And like, he just feels like the richness of knowing that love. No, right? Because one, love is not a feeling, right? Love is a verb. It's something you have to do. And so it seems like what he got from that was filling an attachment wound that he had, whatever that might be. And by attachment, we just mean that there's some stuff on the inside of him that he has not healed up that probably relates to how he grew up and his family of origin, and his inability to healthily attach as an adult. And the same for her inability to healthily attach as an adult. And to Claudia's point, I think you have to look at power here. Like there is no way to look at this dynamic and not see that there was a misuse of power as it relates to Jada's experience, age, whatever you want to call it, influence, money, stature, whatever. There was power there that was wielded in an effort to get something that she wanted. And to be honest, I didn't want to say predator for a while. And I was actually talking about this with my partner like 2 days ago. And I was like, predator sounds so intense. But then I looked up the definition of predator, and I'll read it to you. It says, here it is, one who injures or exploits others for personal gain or profit. When I read that,
I hear what you're saying today. Yeah, and that, technically may fit the definition, but I think people would also wrestle with the fact that you have two people who are adults and two people who are coming to the table with at least stated the same goals. You know what I'm saying? And I think in this, tell me if I'm wrong, I'm not seeing the element that I associate with predators, such as a grooming process. I'm not seeing an element where this person who otherwise is very articulate about their needs, their wants, their history and everything like this. I'm not seeing that. Tell me about that. Tell me, can we explore that power differential? Because it can happen like this, where you have an older person and a younger person. It can happen in a work relationship. It can happen at church with somebody who is respected and that person who's a member. You know what I mean? This can be. So talk to me about when this power or this dynamic really is not what it seems to be.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
In a heterosexual marriage with a man and a woman who, over time, whether it's because, he may make more money or whether it's because so there's a financial obligation to that relationship, that then there's an idea that this person needs me, right? So in terms of what I have over this person means that I can wield that in order to get things that I want. And so power can be overt, but it can be really subtle too. In this case, I think it was pretty overt because she put herself out there by saying, I wanted to feel happy, right? So that means, and I guess for me, again, language is important for me, right? So I might not call her a predator, but the behavior was predatory. At the best, it was definitely manipulative and exploitive, right? And so it's like there were elements that were like, man, you decided that you needed a fix in a particular way. And your object of fixing was in such a state that they consented, but why would they not? Right? Think about what it is to be in a place of grief or loss or feeling detached, or when you're using substances to that degree, there is an immense amount, especially for men, depression happening there. So there's these ideas hopelessness. And this family comes in and says, we love you. We're going to love on you and take care of you and da. And then it's this attractive person that's saying, I'm going to love on you and take care of you. There is a power imbalance in that. And I think that in the recesses of her mind somewhere, she's aware of that. as well.
Mm-hmm. I would agree with Amelia. I think that that's what was crossing my mind when I was, when you guys were thinking through grooming as well. Because if he's in this situation and she's coming in, and the grooming can be affirmation, the grooming can be that, he's trying to start a music career. Jada and Will have both engaged with the making and production of music. So then it's like, I'm doing that. I'm trying to help you heal. So I feel like all of those things kind of fit in the boat of grooming personally. And even if, she didn't intend, right? Like, let's say that in her heart of hearts, she did not intend to get into any kind of an emotional or sexual relationship with him. I think that any healthy adult would not be in that situation, or if they saw themselves leaning in that situation, they would quickly remove themselves and reassert boundaries. I think that Jada, and then she says this on the Red Table Talk, Jada's problem with codependence, I think, made her vulnerable to needing to save somebody, needing to heal somebody, needing to fix somebody. Will is not that man. And so
he didn't need that, is what you're saying.
He don't need that from her. But she has
in that dynamic, power differential wise between her and Will, for a long time in their relationship, he had much more power than she did. Absolutely. Right. So you can't, that idea of wanting to feel needed or to feel belonged to is hard to do when somebody has everything versus when someone doesn't. Right. Like that's that mentality, right?
What do you do if you're in a relationship and you sense that there's a power differential, or you see that there are patterns of behaviors that indicate to you that one party has the power and the other party does not? One party gets what they want, the other party does not. And that's, with the way we're setting this up, this was Steph Curry and his wife, where she felt as though he got all the attention and nobody was looking at her, and everybody got on her case about this. This is somebody who felt powerless and wanted to step into the light and shine for themselves, right? So what are you supposed to do?
I think it's tough, right? Power it's like privilege. It's one of those things where one, it has to be exposed. And oftentimes the person that's in power doesn't want to be exposed in that way. And so oftentimes it takes a neutral third party member, i.e. a therapist or a trusted confidant, to be able to give a more objective perspective about what's happening. Because the idea that the disempowered person is going to convince the person in power that they should let go of their power so that they can both be equal, that's not going to happen, right? And so it's got to be a situation where there is safety and security in relationship to expose the power, which a lot of times doesn't exist emotionally, that safety and security to do that. Because then if I expose this about you or to you or tell you how I feel about you, how does that then make you feel about me? And a lot of relationships can be built on a power differential, particularly when you think about, we're three different Black women sitting here. I'm from a Caribbean background. Power is embedded in the culture, right? And so when you think about those, you're trying to push against cultural norms and societal, Claudia mentioned earlier, gender perspectives and gender roles. You're trying to push against the disempowered person needs some leverage in that. And I think that comes from an outside third party. So that's what I would say is get you some therapy, or get you a place that feels safe enough to explore those things, because it's going to be really hard to do that, just the two of you one-on-one trying to have these conversations.
Have you seen success at correcting any of that before?
I think when folks are willing, when folks are open, when there is a level of humility and trust in the relationship, 100%. What is challenging is when folks come to the table wanting to be right, wanting to not adjust. A lot of marriage is about how well are you able to adjust and be flexible and be adaptable. And frankly, folks just aren't willing to do that oftentimes. And so then you get these life partnerships that are like, okay, let's make terms that makes it so that we don't have to change with each other, but we can just figure out ways to flourish in the world outside of one another, but not have to deal with the business part of getting divorced. And so like, let's create these arrangements, but then there's still violation within those arrangements. So it's tricky. It's tricky.
Claudia's soaking this all in.
Yeah, I think it's good. She's adding everything that I needed her to add. Like, this is great. Absolutely great. So one of the big things that is being talked about right now is this term entanglement. All right. Jada came to the table and Will asked her point blank. He was like, all right, Jada, just for the people, explain to them what happened. Yeah. She said, that she entered into a friendship with Og. Mm-hmm. I think pet names are key here.
It really is.
So, we're still using pet names, Og. And we were friends. And then we ended up in an entanglement. Will proceeded to push back just a little bit. Mm-hmm. And then he was like, what is that? Like, just say what it is, right? I really want to know, man, what were you guys' just initial reactions and hearing that that her use that term? What did you and then Amelia, what did you feel like she was doing from a clinician standpoint in that moment by describing their interactions that way?
Well, for me, and Amelia, I'm really anxious to hear what you're going to say, because for me, when I heard the term and in the conversation, this is what I know about life. I know this is not my area or my field of study, but I know there's always two sides to every story. That everybody's case is good until it stands up to cross-examination. And so for me, when she came out there and she said entanglement and she passed it off, I'm like, okay, that's the way she looks at it. But it is not until I heard August's side of the story where he felt that he was committed in this love relationship and he had the full green light to pursue this. But she was not in that same space. Talk to us.
Mm-hmm. See, now I think she was in that same space.
Ooh.
And I think used entanglement is when she told on herself, right? Because Will could have gone along with it and just said, oh, yeah, it was an entanglement. But the fact that he was willing to allow you to tell on yourself also describes their dynamic. But again, there is an evasiveness with which she was, like, this reluctance to describe the relationship for what it actually was. And to me, there is latent and sort of like real deep under that. To me, is some level of shame. It's either it's shame or it's there's a denial about the reality of what it is that you experience, which is, why would you choose to deny something that was meaningful for you and you sought out to fulfill a need? Why would you deny the very nature of what that was? Or why would you choose to skew the nature of what that was? And for me, there's got to be some shame or guilt in there. And I think that when at the end of the interview, when he says, I'm going to get you back in a very joking manner, or like, I got to get you, Will says to Jada, there's this idea of retribution. There's this idea of like hurt, violation. She knows that she did something to her life partner and also to this young man that more than an entanglement. And the evasiveness suggests that she's clear about that, but also suggests a little bit of shame and also manipulation, right? That I would manipulate the larger narrative to be an entanglement versus a relationship, an affair, whatever you want to call it. Like, it was what it was, but she wasn't willing. And that again suggests that there's more healing that needs to be done as well.
Man, it's anybody else bothered by the fact that, never mind, go ahead, Claudia. I'll come back to me.
No, you can't do all that.
Start it out.
This thing is getting on my nerves. Okay, first of all, y'all gonna help me. All right, y'all are gonna help me, and I'm sure the people who are watching right now can help me jump in. I know every episode I'm buffering. Okay, here's my thing. The thing that's killing me on the inside is that I feel maybe I'm immature. Okay, I'll take that. All right, but I feel as though people think that, oh, I have this whole portfolio of things that I do. I have an entanglement with my life partnership, and they have all these different things that they set up that sound so mature and so worldly wise. And in the back of my little Christian mind and experience, all I'm seeing is red lights, yellow lights, and cautionary tale. And I don't mean to preach, but for me, I have a hard time navigating through this space without, Proverbs in the back of my mind, without my life and faith view. And I just don't understand how people are doing this to themselves and enduring this kind of hurt and this level of intrigue. Am I crazy? So it's hard for me to make a question about this, because I'm like, these people are clearly hurt, and this clearly did not work.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point, Carmela, because I think sometimes, we see people trying to remix what God put in place and trying to sell it to us as though it's a better orientation of it. And what I hear you saying is, it's like, hey, y'all tried to redo this and you're letting us know it's not working. All right. But, the other thing to your point as well is, I think that what's crucial to this conversation is Jada never wanted to be married. So if you watch kind of older Red Table Talks, particularly when she and Will are kind of talking through how they even got to life partnership and, different things that she struggled with. One of the main things that Jada always says is she never wanted to be married. Wow. Never, not once. But then in the same, in a different conversation with Will said he wanted to be married from the time he was 6.
Wow.
So you're dealing with two people here who are trying to stay together. Will is already bearing this burden of his first divorce. So he does not like that he got divorced to begin with. He felt like that was violent and horrible and does not want to see that happen again. As a young man, he has always wanted to be married. He watched his father beat his mother. So he has a lot of baggage around what marriage is and what he feels like as a man, he's trying to do with his own marriage, things he's trying to do and undo with his own marriage. He happened to marry a woman that did not ever want to be married. And so now she is trying to kind of impose on him as well. Hey, I want to stay in this with you, but this kind of traditional approach and different things like that. So there's a clash. At the least, there is a clash, and a friend of mine really broke this down in a really great way. She's also a mental health clinician. The way that she broke this down is she was saying, ultimately, what happens is Jada is kind of crushing Will into what she wants to be in concerning a relationship. And her ability to do that is based on how badly he wants to be married. And so he wants to be married and stay married so bad that Jada is able to kind of manipulate and reorder things in a way within their relationship that is more comfortable for her than he originally even wanted. So that now Will is married, but he's not in a marriage. And he has really sacrificed wanting a marriage so that he can stay married.
But, okay, and Amelia, I'm coming to you. I'm going to ask you this question based on what she's saying. For me, I feel uncomfortable diagnosing or working through their baggage. But what I can say, or what I am curious about on a general level, Amelia, is how do you take partners with such opposing views of what this union is supposed to be about and make this work?
So you don't, right? Like and to be fair, I would even assume that Will wants this construct of life partnership, because I'm assuming that there are benefits for him to having this form of life partnership as well.
Yeah.
However, the terms were still violated. Somewhere in the process, someone didn't do what they were asked to do. And so again, so when you have two people that says, one says, I want to do it this way for me, and the other says, well, I want to do it this way for me, whatever we want to call it. There's a breakdown in the relationship. If neither one of those partners can find something about their way to lessen an effort to compromise and meet the other person halfway, or to give the other person grace about, it won't work, because now we're not even arguing about the issue. We end up arguing about how the issue makes you feel. And then you end up arguing about last year when you felt that way. And then you end up arguing about when you felt that way. Like, it becomes this convoluted thing. And we're not even talking about the fact that you fundamentally disagree about something that is foundational. And that is how we want to live. What are our core values? If we don't have synergy about that, that's why the divorce rate is 50%. There's a reason why it's not working on some level. And I think it's because there's at least one of the reasons, and I would say definitely for Black marriages, is that the idea of what it's going to take to make a marriage work, sometimes folks are just unwilling to do that because it does take work. And then on the other hand, it's how much am I willing to sacrifice of myself in the process? Because parts of you do have to be sacrificed in the process for it to work, both people. But usually what ends up happening is one does more sacrificing and then resents it and then gets upset. And then now you have a breakdown in the agreement, and now the terms of agreement are messed up. And we're just seeing that in a bigger, more exposed, sort of larger than life way with people that we've grown up, watching and sort of admiring. And I think at some point it's like it's Black marriage. People want to be able to see two Black people work well and succeed and amass wealth and influence and still love each other. But what we're seeing here is they love each other. There's definitely a fundamental respect for each other as friends. But in terms of what that means as a marriage, to Claudia's point, they are married, but what that means as how we may understand the construct of marriage is probably quite different.
Amelia, one of your areas of study, Claudia mentioned in the introduction, was talking about the element of race in relationships. Did I hear that correctly?
Yes,
and
yes.
It seems to me, when we look at August's story, and as I did a little background, and you think about the nature of stress and what it means to be a Black person. And to have the complexity of stress that goes from or covers everything from finance to career opportunity, job opportunity, to housing, to education, to the criminal justice system. Then you come down to try to make a relationship with people. You know what I mean? And so then let's add all that, those interests in the pot. Then you got people such as August, who came to a relationship, who has sexual molestation in his past, substance abuse and addiction, physical issues, stress-related issues. And then you got this Hollywood drama on this other side. And so to me, when you look at this, you're thinking, man, who can survive a relationship right now, given this context? What is it that you bring or use in your practice to help Black love last and make it?
Yeah. So I think that's an awesome question, Carmela, because I think we focus oftentimes with Black folks on the deficits and the things that we lack versus looking to our strengths. And so for me, I'm a strengths-based clinician, which means that, but especially with communities of color, like what is working well? And how do we amplify what is working well such that enough space to look at the things that aren't working as well, versus therapy is largely about tell me what your problem is, right? It's framed in the context of a deficit, right? Whereas with Black families, what's important in terms of success is certainly faith is very huge in our community, and how we use that in the therapeutic space to heighten, what is our responsibility to each other in light of our understanding of forgiveness and grace and humility, right? And so that's really huge for folks. But then also too, there are things that are working well for us. A lot of times it's seen in their children, right? Or it's seen in the way, the way they educate, or things that are priorities to them, their values. So we really try to amplify those things in the process in an effort to deal with some of the deficits. But it's got to be from a strengths-based perspective, because we are folks that are resilient, and we have weathered several storms. But I think, again, to your point, it's like if as an individual, I'm not willing to do my own individual work that says something's coming up for me, whether it was when I was a child and I was molested, or when I was a child and I grew up without a parent in the home. If I'm not willing to look at some of that stuff and say it is contributing to some dysfunction in my adult relationships, I'm going to continue to perpetuate challenging relationships. Because even as you mentioned that I wasn't quite aware that he had experienced molestation, and that kind of violation as a child makes you more familiar to violation as an adult. So think about that. It is not uncanny that there would be a relationship that he would be involved in where there would be elements of violation as well, because that's what he's familiar with, right? And so it's the same thing as us, whether it's like, part of the reason why I study dads and daughters is because I absolutely adore my dad, right? And so I had this really wonderful relationship with him, but I understand that so many didn't have that experience. And what does that mean, not have that experience, and how that impacts how you adult in your relationship. So if we're not willing as individuals to look at those things, even when I see a couple together, if they are not willing to do some of that individual work, it makes what we're going to do together really, really challenging.
Yeah, that's so good. On that line, as you were talking, what I was thinking of is what Will and Jada and August dealt with, or are dealing with, all this baggage, and Carmela's previous question. The only difference is that it happened on a stage, right? Yeah. But this happens in relationships on our level all the time, every day. So how then is it possible to stay in a relationship like that? Do people stay in relationships where there's this much baggage and this much betrayal? How do people stay in relationships like this and those relationships still be healthy and not toxic, if that question makes sense?
So like this relationship structure dynamic, it's not sustainable in no way, shape, or form. It is not sustainable to have an outside partner in the midst of a partnership that is violating the terms of agreement, and that be sustainable. Even you remove the outside partner, now we've got to renegotiate those terms again. And so the infidelity, for sure, that happens in a lot of relationships, and you see a lot of relationships last through infidelity and through breaches of violation. Particularly if it's not like a sexual violation or financial violation. Finances, people don't play about, right? That finances are quicker to get you divorced than infidelity, right? But in terms of, can I recover after my partner steps out and does something that is a violation to the relationship? Sure. But the problem is a lot of us, we don't do the recovery work well. So then we stay together, we push through it, we have a kid or two, and then, it comes up again 15 or 16 years later down the line, and you realize in some form, whether it's resentment or another partner's infidelity or an emotional affair, those happen a lot too. So the recovery process, we need to do a better job at, right? Like, and I think it comes down to the resources and being able to communicate, because it's really, really painful to go through knowing that your partner violated your trust. And it's really hard to rebuild trust. It's possible, but it's hard. And so I think, yes, to the extent that can there be breaches of trust and violations in relationship and people recover? broad sweepingly, I would say yes. But there are conditions to that. And what you do on the other side of that is really, really critical to what happens to the trajectory of the relationship.
I would think that it's one thing to go through these things that so many people do. It's another thing to be smack dab on the headlines, trending on Twitter, trending on all social media platforms, making the evening entertainment shows about your personal business. For me, that's just an added shame and focus that would make it harder to come back from. And that leads me to my other question. The other part that made me buffer with this whole situation, Claudia, is, and maybe this is a generational area, and you all can help us with this. I am uncomfortable with the level of transparency that I'm seeing in some of this. Now, come on. I worked as a lawyer. There's not a lot of stuff that I haven't, seen. I worked as a journalist, and I have asked those uncomfortable questions. Come on, Gail. All right. But I'm looking at this thing with August. I'm like, what stone has not been unturned about people's personal life these days? Why do I need to know all of that? So, Claudia, you're looking at me like, am I just being old? I don't know. But my thing is there something healing? Because people always say, he was so vulnerable, she was so transparent. Does that help your personal relationship to be vulnerable and transparent on a public stage?
I'm going to say no. I personally, I don't think it's beneficial to a relationship to have all of your business on social media. I have even had to learn personally that sometimes it's just not always good to even post. I could post a picture with my boyfriend, and almost every single time, 99.9% of the time, it's going to have 80 plus comments about how we need to get married right now. People offering to be the photographer, offering to be the musician day of, offering to make the dress. And that adds a kind of unwanted pressure, so that, when, as someone that is in the relationship, when you are then in the relationship and you are dealing with the ish of the relationship, it is like, oh, well, I can't leave now because 465 people liked the picture I posted 2 days ago. Right. Yeah. And I'm not Will or Jada. Yeah. So like, that's just like keeping it 100,000. So I don't, I don't think that it's beneficial to kind of have everything about your relationship on social media at all. And I think, one question that you're kind of posing that had me looking to the sky thinking, Carmela, which I thought was so great, is just why do we share so much personally, period? And to, I think what was kind of alluded to in your question is my sharing on social media, is that providing me any kind of healing? Is that providing me any kind of like personal benefit apart from validation and affirmation for opening my mouth? Yeah. And I think that's the thing. I'm wondering, it seems as though it is a generational thing. And it seems as though my generation is affirmation hungry, affirmation deficient. And social media is kind of serving as a space for us to get that, whereas we either did not receive that kind of verbal affirmation from Generation X, Boomer, silent generation. Particularly thinking about Black communities do not do affirmation well. Whether it's in the Caribbean, whether it's on the continent, whether it's in the States, we do not do affirmation well at all. So that now you have a generation of affirmation deficient people who are posting whatever is necessary to be validated. That's what I see. And it's why, boomers are not on social media talking about what they experienced as a child. Like
what they do in the privacy of their sexual relationship.
No.
Not get that. Talk to us, Amelia. What is going on with these people?
Yeah, I mean, I think Claudia said it right. I mean, there is definitely a sector of folks that I'm not going to say everybody that posts a picture about their private, their relationships or their life is seeking validation. But I would say there is a good majority of folks that are wanting affirmation about. I mean, that is what the likes are about, right? They're to let you know that I see you and I like something about what I see, whatever that is. Right. And so there was an uproar when the likes were taken away. You couldn't see who liked you, And so this idea of wanting to be affirmed and validated, I think Claudia hit it right on the nail. Like this generation, our generation, grew up in a way that it was more about get your education, get it done, make it happen. Like from the generation before, our parents' generation, which was like, survive and figure it out for yourself. And so there wasn't this emphasis on take care of yourself, be kind to yourself, love yourself. There wasn't that. And so now as adults now, we're trying to figure out what that looks like, but from a lot of times from these places of deficit and needing that affirmation and validation externally, not understanding how to provide it for ourselves and needing that to feel better about where we are. And so that's what we're seeing. Unfortunately, that's what we're seeing. But no, we should not be putting out personal, private information. I'm probably one of the most private people. It just won't happen. And I think that we do ourselves a disservice because then once you put it out there, you open yourself up to the conversation. There's no way to censor the conversation once you offer it up.
Once you offer it up. And, and you have the ability just to say no. If somebody asks you your business, you just, no, I'm not going there. And it's not your business. It's not a talking point. It's not a bullet point. I'm not advertising for anybody to understand this about me. I just don't, I don't know. That is one of my pet peeves, but it's also something that I realize that there's a difference in the generations, that there's a difference in the way we do it. And I never put that together that there would be people who are starved. I've always looked at it the other way, is that, and there's science to prove this, Facebook stokes that ego in us. The minute you see that notification in red, bing, that's what the science says, is that triggers something in your mind. Boom, I need to look at that right now. Boom, I see a heart. It brings you, it pulls you back. And so even if I wasn't starved for affection and affirmation before, the social media has created this monster within me that is being driven by likes and loves and laughs and all that sort of thing. I don't know.
There's this other perspective, right? Because I try to look at, both sides of things or multiple sides, right? Alternative perspectives. And I do think that there's something to be said, though, about being able to see people that are larger than life or that you don't necessarily relate as if they have real contextual life problems, coming out and saying someone like that is suffering from mental illness or dealing with grief and loss, like August, saying, the battle to get healthy has been a long one, right? Yeah. And I've had to go to therapy and I've needed medication and I've needed support and I haven't necessarily always gone to the best avenues to get that. But here I am, I'm still just trying to survive and figure out where thriving comes in. There is something, I think, to that, to hear those stories in that way. And I think there is something to seeing people make mistakes and having to figure it out. What's not necessary all the time necessarily is the details of those private moments. But I think we do, and this generation too does value being able to see themselves in other folks in a real life way that says, okay, you have the money, you have the car, you have the job, you have all of these things, but like where is your heart, mind, and soul? And for folks to be able to say, my heart, mind, and soul are not in a good place. And I want to be better about that.
Right.
That's really good. I appreciate that. Because I firmly agree with that. I mean, when I was, deep in depression, I definitely shared that online, but I was very cautious not to tell anyone why I was depressed as a means of protecting a variety of parties who might not want to talk about, what we are experiencing as our own individual collective. So I definitely agree with you on that there is so much power, and there's a necessity, because I think, so many people even, wrote to me and said, oh man, Claudia, I could never see you as someone that is dealing with depression, or man, Claudia, I never knew that you were insecure, or Claudia, I didn't know you were. So I absolutely just want to co-sign everything Amelia said from the standpoint of, I think it is important that we kind of demystify, I think, so much, and do everything we can to remain human to people, and just say, hey, yo, we're in this thing together. Like, we're all struggling. We've all got something that we're trying to figure out. And here is the way that I did it. I'm not going to tell you what got me here. That's what I have Dr. Pepper for. That was my therapist. All right. Dr. Pepper Phillips was amazing. All right. And so, yeah, I think that's important. So, man.
As believers too, I think it's all the more important, because it's something that we know that the church lacks and doesn't do as good a job about. And being, we're up there preaching, but y'all all got stuff. Y'all, when it's time, go see your therapist to get it together. So how are we able to strengthen each other and create the transparency and humility necessary for us to grow? Because we grow by the testimony of others, right? So
one takeaway that I love, that, like I said before this, I'll be honest, I didn't know August. I didn't know his music. I didn't know about him, but I was completely impressed, like I said, by his level of insight into what was going on with him, and the struggle that he's taken to get back. Because one cautionary tale from him that I love, that he was able to make the connection, was the drama and the complexity that was going on in his life emotionally, and the historical baggage with his family. It manifested in the physical illness that almost took him out. So when he couldn't walk because he had the Guillain-Barré, is that how you say it? This thing,
Guillain-Barré.
Yeah, it was a perfect storm between the stress and the emotional health and the lack of taking care of your physical being. Boom, now he can't walk. Boom, now he can't move or talk. This stuff will take you out. And we have to take the time, not just for self-care, but we have to go with our loved ones and say, look, I'm tired. Like he said, I'm tired of tipping around the elephants in the room, the stuff that hurt me, the stuff that we all know hurt you. We got to get this right. Otherwise, it's coming out on all unhealthy ways and all unhealthy levels.
So good, Carmela. Man, Amelia, give us, what is the hope in all of this, man? When you think about everything that we've talked about this morning, is there any hope for marriage, for family? Is there hope with baggage? Is there a hope for toxic women? What is the hope in all of this?
Yeah, I think that the hope is that if you want it, if you want the healing, if you want the marriage to work, if you want the family to work, you will be willing to do the work necessary to make it work. And I think that it goes back to personal responsibility and accountability. But if you want it, that healing is there. I believe that for anybody, that if that is what you want and that is what you're going to seek and purpose after, that you can get that, and that your family, your relationships will be better off for it. You investing that time into yourself to figure you out so that you show up in a better way for the people that depend on you, because you cannot give anything to anybody if you first don't know how to give to yourself.
Yeah.
So good. Man, as always, it is a tier to end, but we've got to bring a close to this amazing conversation. Amelia, we are so grateful for the time that you have spent with us this morning. Thank you for lending us your voice, your expertise, your research. And let the people know, how can they follow you? How can they, keep up? Are you working on anything that you want to share with people? What's going on?
I'm working on a dissertation, child. I just wanted to be done.
Yes.
But beyond that, yes, of course, they can follow me on mainly on Instagram. I'm at Amelia Flynn, Amelia.Flynn 424. And I'm also looking to, we are starting an organization around Black Clinician Collective. And so be on the lookout for that, because that I think will be really exciting and interesting for clinicians. And also, I would just encourage folks to get well, do what they need to get well, and to invest in themselves and their families. That's the best thing that you can do.
Awesome. Make sure you are following Amelia.Flynn 424 on Instagram. And of course, as I always say, Message cannot do this podcast without your support. So make sure that you go to our website at www.messagemagazine.com, donate, make sure you sign up for our weekly newsletter, and of course, get our most recent edition of our bi-month Printly magazine. But as I always say, guys, we've got so much going on. We really need you to follow. We want you to make sure that you are using our Bible studies and our tracks during this moment. This is an awesome opportunity to share the love of God through a Black voice. We are a Black-owned business, a Black-owned ministry, and we are committed to lifting up Black issues, Black concerns, Black needs, Black questions. And we really want to continue to do that as effectively as possible. So make sure that you are supporting, donating, and a consistent customer and client of Message Magazine. So make sure that you are following us on all of our social media platforms at Message 1898. Of course, we are also on Facebook, but I also want to let you know we are on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can catch all of these episodes and so much more on YouTube. So make sure you're following us on YouTube. And I think that's it. The other thing that I want to mention is tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, the one and only Carmela Monk Crawford, who is to my, listen, whichever direction she ends up. All right. To the left. Hey. All right. Carmela is on a pod. She is guesting on a podcast tonight, The Brink. It is going to be an awesome conversation. You want to look out for that. Make sure you tune in. They are talking about race in America and the tipping point. So this is a critical conversation that you want to make sure that you are a part of. And of course, I am so excited to announce that Message Magazine is officially a partner of the National Action Network's March on Washington, the end of August 28th. So make sure that you are present and accounted for that. Get your knee off our necks march. That is happening. We are going to be down there, and of course, we're going to make sure to capture it for you. But more importantly, we're just going to be down there, committed and partnering with all of you as we try to apply the necessary pressure to get some policy change around police brutality. So as always, it's always a pleasure. It's great to be with you. It's been another day, another topic, another amazing guest. Make sure you join us next week, Thursday, 11 a.m. We'll be right back here, same time, same channel, just a different conversation. I'll see you then. Bye.
Awesome.
Claudia, I think the one other thing that we have to remember, our behavior is definitely influenced or impacted by Claudia, I think the one other thing that we have to remember
We're just excited that with the powers of Zoom and the like,
want to be
Claudia, I think the eating of certain animals
is that we have plenty of people that want to be ministry. Claudia, I think one other thing that we have to remember is that we have plenty of people
affiliates, ABC affiliates
that
here
want
in the
to be
United States.
ministry.
Not telling the truth and going back to let's just dip
some of
is
the
that
issues.
we have
And
plenty
so
of people
we live our lives
that
working.
want to
If
be
you think about
brother from another
Claudia,
mother,
I think the one other thing that we have to remember
Richard,
is
and
that
I'm
we
telling
have
you,
plenty of
you know,
people
we handle
that
the heavy
want to be
stuff. We
ministry
do
partners
the
with
heavy
messaging.
stuff.